right, so we are inching closer and closer towards the end of our unit. So today we are going to be moving forward with our discussion on the American Dream and moving more into the modern day American Dream. So what we would see as the American Dream today and kind of what that looks like for different groups of people. So we've already looked at the American Dream kind of through the eyes of two authors from kind of late 1800s, early 1900s, Walt Whitman and Langston Hughes. And so today we're going to look at it through the eyes of other people in America from more recent times. So we're going to start off with your bell ringer. So your bell ringer for today, you'll be taking just a few moments to research Japanese internment camps. Now this might be something you are already familiar with due to, maybe learning it in your U.S. history class. But I want you to go ahead and do a quick research, take note of some of the important information, and then just tell me, what did you learn about Japanese internment camps? Were you shocked to read about this happening in the United States? And any other thoughts you have on this topic? All right, so if you will, everybody should be kind of wrapping up now. So let's talk about what you found. Somebody tell me what a Japanese internment camp is. What were these used for? Okay, so several reasons that were given why they were implemented. Okay, so what did you learn about the people put in these camps, their experiences there? Tell me a little bit about that. All right, and was anybody shocked that something like this happened in the United States? Yeah. So most of the time when we think internment camps, a lot of people think, the Holocaust, which, valid. But yeah, we actually had something, kind of similar, happen here in the United States. So I had you do research on this because we are actually going to be reading from someone who is still alive today and actually lived in a Japanese internment camp. So before we get to that though, I want us to do a quick review of what we talked about yesterday and what we've kind of been talking about this week. So first I just want to quickly review argument, claim. All right, so as we discussed yesterday, an argument is just you presenting a stance on an issue. Counter argument is just the opposite stance on that issue. Rebuttal is your comeback to someone's argument or counter argument. Your claim is, of course, the main argument in your essay, what it is you're arguing. In the case of this essay you're going to be writing for my class, it will be your argument on your definition of the American Dream and your reasoning behind that. And then rhetoric is the art of using language effectively and persuasively. So how do you persuade your audience or your readers to kind of see your perspective and get them not necessarily to jump on your bandwagon, but for them to maybe come closer to believing, your opinion. So that's argument. And then, of course, to review the 4 tenets of the American Dream we've been talking about. 1, you should be able to recite these by now, honestly. Everyone can participate equally and can always start over. The reasonable anticipation of success. If you work hard enough, you will be successful. Success results from actions and traits under one's own control. You can control your success. You have to work hard enough, etc., etc. And lastly, if success implies failure, failure implies sin. So if you are not successful and you failed, then it obviously must be something you did wrong. You must be living your life wrong, done something bad you're being punished for, or you're not working hard enough, okay? So Has anyone heard of this individual, Ke Huy Quan? Okay, a couple people. Where do you know him from? Most people know him from kind of the same place. So hoping somebody would say the Goonies. All right, so yeah, he did play in the Goonies, and then he's been in some more recent stuff too. But this year, actually, he won his first Oscar. And I actually stumbled across this a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have my students watch this. So we're gonna take like 3 minutes, and I want you guys to listen to his acceptance speech, because honestly, it is so relevant to what we're talking about this week. So.
Thank you. Thank you. My mom is 84 years old, and she's at home watching. Mom, I just won an Oscar. My journey started on a boat. I spent a year in a refugee camp. And somehow, I ended up here on Hollywood's biggest stage. They say stories like this only happen in the movies. I cannot believe it's happening to me. This is the American dream. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Academy for this honor of a lifetime. Thank you to my mom for the sacrifices she made to get me here. To my little brother, David, who calls me every day just to remind me to take good care of myself. I love you, brother. Thank you to Kendall for all your support and everything you've done. Thank you to A24, to Daniels, Jonathan, Jamie, Michelle, and my Goonies brother for life, Jeff Cohen. I owe everything to the love of my life, my wife Echo, who month after month, year after year for 20 years, told me that one day, my time will come. Dreams are something you have to believe in. I almost gave up on mine. To all of you out there, please keep your dreams alive. Thank you so much for welcoming me back. I love you. Thank you.
So, very powerful speech, very big moment for him. He mentioned, how he came to the United States of America on a boat. He had to stay in a refugee camp, and now he is winning an Oscar. And he says, and I quote, "This is the American dream." So the past few days, we've kind of been looking at like the flaws we've identified within the concept of the American dream, the flaws based on these tenets that Hochschild has put together, based on, her observances in America, like throughout history. And so Ke Huy Quan gives us kind of more of the positive side of the American dream. So how does his story, how does it influence your thoughts on the American dream? How does this influence this definition that you're putting together for your final essay for this unit? How does his American dream that he tells us about support or contradict the tenets that Hochschild has told us about? You know, is he the exception? Tell me some of your thoughts after watching this. So now I want us to move forward. All right, and we're gonna read, okay? So we've watched a video, listened to this speech. So now we're going to read a short article. Has anyone heard of George Takei? I hope I'm saying his last name right. I'm probably not. Okay, yes, Star Trek. Yes. Okay, great. Y'all are doing great. First the Goonies, now Star Trek. So yeah, he did play in the OG Star Trek. And so you guys researched the Japanese internment camps. So George Takei, I don't know, actually lived in an internment camp during his childhood. And so you should have this article in front of you already on your desk, so you'll just follow along. So George Takei is an American actor, director, author, and activist of Japanese descent, well known, like we said, for his role in Star Trek. And this is actually, that we're gonna read, this is a TED Talk that he gave, and it's just kind of been written out. But he is discussing his experiences being in this Japanese internment camp in Arkansas, and I've actually had a chance to visit it before when I was at Delta State myself. But during World War II, and kind of how this influenced how he feels about America today. So if you will follow along, this was in 2014, by the way, so still pretty recent. But if you'll follow along, I will give you a break from my talking and from your having to read aloud, and we will use the read aloud feature on Common Lit. So just be following along as they read it aloud.
By George Takei.
Oh, Takei.
I'm a veteran of the Starship Enterprise. I soared through the galaxy driving a huge starship with a crew made up of people from all over this world. Many different races, many different cultures, many different heritages, all working together. And our mission was to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Well, applause. I am the grandson of immigrants from Japan who went to America, boldly going to a strange new world, seeking new opportunities. My mother was born in...
So, sorry to interrupt, but you see here how he has made the connection from his role in Star Trek to an actual experience, you know, in his life. So, just thought that was interesting.
Sacramento, California. My father was a San Franciscan. They met and married in Los Angeles, and I was born there. We saw two soldiers marching up our driveway. They carried bayonets on their rifles. They stomped up the front porch and banged on the door. My father answered it, and the soldiers ordered us out of our home. My father gave my brother and me small luggages to carry, and we walked out and stood on the driveway waiting for our mother to come out. And when my mother finally came out, she had our baby sister in one arm, a huge duffel bag in the other, and tears were streaming down both her cheeks. I will never be able to forget that scene. It is burned into my memory. We were taken from our home and loaded onto train cars with other Japanese American families. There were guards stationed at both ends of each car, as if we were criminals. We were taken 2/3 of the way across the country, rocking on that train for 4 days and 3 nights, to the swamps of Arkansas. I still remember the barbed wire fence that confined me. I remember the tall sentry tower, with the machine guns pointed at us. I remember the searchlight that followed me when I made the night runs from my barrack to the latrine. But to 5-year-old me, I thought it was kind of nice that they'd lit the way for me to pee. I was a child, too young to understand the circumstances of my being there. Children are amazingly adaptable. What would be grotesquely abnormal became my normality in the prisoner of war camps. It became routine for me to line up 3 times a day to eat lousy food in a noisy mess hall. It became normal for me to go with my father to bathe in a mass shower. Being in a prison, a barbed wire prison camp, became my normality. When the war ended, we were released and given a one-way ticket to anywhere in the United States. My parents decided to go back home to Los Angeles, But Los Angeles was not a welcoming place. We were penniless. Everything had been taken from us, and the hostility was intense. Our first home was on Skid Row, in the lowest part of our city, living with derelicts, drunkards and crazy people, the stench of urine all over, on the street, in the alley, in the hallway. It was a horrible experience, and for us kids, it was terrorizing. I remember once a drunkard came staggering down, fell down right in front of us, and threw up. My baby sister said, "Mama, let's go back home," because behind barbed wires was for us home. My parents worked hard to get back on their feet. We had lost everything. They were at the middle of their lives and starting all over. They worked their fingers to the bone, and ultimately they were able to get the capital together to buy a 3-bedroom home in a nice neighborhood. And I was a teenager, and I became very curious about my childhood imprisonment. I had read civics books that told me about the ideals of American democracy. All men are created equal. We have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and I couldn't quite make that fit with what I knew to be my childhood imprisonment. I read history books, and I couldn't find anything about it. And so I engaged my father after dinner in long, sometimes heated conversations. We had many, many conversations like that, and what I got from them was my father's wisdom. He was the one that suffered the most under those conditions of imprisonment, and yet he understood American democracy. He told me that our democracy is a people's democracy, and it can be as great as the people can be, but it is also as fallible as people are. He told me that American democracy is vitally dependent on good people who cherish the ideals of our system and actively engage in the process of making our democracy work. And he took me to a campaign headquarters. The governor of Illinois was running for the presidency, and introduced me to American electoral politics. And he also told me about young Japanese Americans during the Second World War. And then the government realized that there's a wartime manpower shortage, and as suddenly as they rounded us up, they opened up the military for service by young Japanese Americans. It was totally irrational, but the amazing thing, the astounding thing, is that thousands of young Japanese American men and women again went from behind those barbed wire fences, put on the same uniform as that of our guards, leaving their families in imprisonment, to fight for this country. They said that they were going to fight not only to get their families out from behind those barbed wire fences, but because they cherished the very ideal of what our government stands for, should stand for, and that was being abrogated by what was being done. All men are created equal, and they went to fight for this country. They were put into a segregated all-Japanese American unit and sent to the battlefields of Europe, and they threw themselves into it. They fought with amazing, incredible courage and valor. They were sent out on the most dangerous missions, and they sustained the highest combat casualty rate of any unit proportionally. They are my heroes. They clung to their belief in the shining ideals of this country, and they proved that being an American is not just for some people. That race is not how we define being an American. They expanded what it means to be an American, including Japanese Americans that were feared and suspected and hated. They were change agents, and they left for me a legacy. They are my heroes, and my father is my hero, who understood democracy and guided me through it. They gave me a legacy, and with that legacy comes a responsibility, and I am dedicated to making my country an even better America, to making our government an even truer democracy. And because of the heroes that I have and the struggles that we've gone through, I can stand before you as a gay Japanese American, but even more than that, I am a proud American.
What would you say is kind of the main theme of his speech? Okay, so kind of similar but kind of different from the speech that we heard from Quan earlier, but still kind of similar backgrounds. A minority, although Quan was not born in the United States, George was, and still, even as an American citizen, received this treatment, went through all this adversity, and still remained loyal to this country. In fact, the name of his speech is called "Why I Love a Country That Once Betrayed Me." So what does this kind of tell you about the American dream? From oh my gosh, how did they say it again? Takei again? From his perspective. So, consider this background, all the adversity that he went through, and now he, is very successful. He was in this awesome movie series. He's given this TED Talk now, reflecting back on this, still loving this country. What does that kind of tell you about, again, the American dream? Is he just another exception? What do you think? So kind of what I'm hearing, the consensus is that, kind of the big theme, the big central idea of this is he is saying, while America's democracy is not perfect, the ideals that the country represents or, is supposed to represent encourages its citizens to, continue fighting for these ideals, continue fighting for what they want America to be like. And we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier in the week, that just because you talk about the flaws of the country, does not mean that you are not patriotic, does not mean that you don't love your country. This is a form of patriotism, fighting for the ideals that are supposed to be there. So what I want you to do, you have 4 questions on the back of this article, okay? So I want you to take a little bit of time. You're gonna do a little bit of independent practice, all right? And I want you to answer these 4 questions, okay? It's gonna make sure, of course, that you understand what he is talking about in the text, but also get you to apply it to what we've been talking about this week, okay? So they are multiple choice, so, taking it a little easy on you. And you can, in fact, I urge you to refer back to the text when you are trying to answer these questions. So I'm going to give you a little time to do that, and then we will go over them and discuss what you've got. So we're going to go over these questions then and kind of discuss a little bit. So we kind of already talked about this, so this one I guess was should have been an easy one for you. So number 1, part A. Which of the following identifies George Takei's main claim in the text? What is kind of the theme here? What is the main thing he is arguing in this text? Okay, we talked about claim earlier. All right, right. So while America's democracy is imperfect, the ideals that the country represents encourages citizens to continue fighting for it. Right, we already established that. All right, so part B is asking you to kind of support this answer with textual evidence, okay? So this is something that you will also be having to do in your essay, okay? You'll be having to not only argue your claim, but provide evidence to support that claim, okay? And your evidence will come from all of these texts that we have read this week. So, which detail from the text best supports the answer to part A? Right, C. He told this from paragraph 8. He told me that American democracy is vitally dependent on good people who cherish the ideals of our system and actively engage in the process of making our democracy work. Right. All right, number 3, we have another part A. How does Takei's understanding of his internment develop over time? So kind of think about how he described his time in the camp. What did you put? Okay. B, he normalizes his experiences at first, but eventually understands that his internment was not an example of democracy at its best. And that kind of goes back to his father saying, democracy is, a people's ideal. So just like people are not perfect and make mistakes, so can, the democracy not be perfect. And then B again, textual evidence. Which quote from the text best supports the answer to part A? D, we have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I couldn't quite make that fit with what I knew to be my childhood imprisonment, from paragraph 8. All right, so maybe could use either of these sources we've covered today in your own definition, depending on which stance you're going to take. So you will be able to keep this article. Go ahead and before you leave the classroom, turn those questions in. I do have an extra credit enrichment activity for you if you so wish to go that far. You can do this for homework and bring it back tomorrow, and it can be used as extra credit on your essay. So on the back of the table, when you turn your paper in, there is a poem called I Am Joaquin by Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez. So this is yet another perspective, and we just simply do not have time to also read this as a class. But if you want this extra perspective for your essay, you can read this poem. And what you're going to turn into me for extra credit, I want you to identify the theme of this poem. All right, so what is the theme? What is their perspective of the American dream in this poem? And then how does this theme relate to our topic this week? Does the message of the poem support or contradict Hochschild's tenets? So you're going to essentially be doing the same thing that we've been doing with the other texts we've been reading. You're just going to do this one on your own. So if you would like to take that opportunity, you can take one of those poems home and just turn that in tomorrow. Tomorrow we will start on the essay. So you have that to be looking forward to. So if you are still unsure of which stance you want to take, then you need to be deciding that like ASAP. But other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow.